This is Yoda. This is my guide for Prot Warrior for War Within Season 2. So going into Season 2 or War Within, I would say Warrior is probably not the best choice defensively. There are a lot of things that challenge tanks that are going to be hard for Warrior. You can kind of just shield wall and ignore pain through most of them. However, compared to another tank, which is just surviving them for free and healing himself to full, where it's not the best choice. The main strength for Warrior, in my opinion, comes from the damage that it brings. You actually do insane damage right now, way higher, I would say, than most other tanks. And you also bring Battle Shot, which is a 5% buff, depending on whatever else is in your group. That's the main strength for Warrior. If you can survive the keys, then Warrior is probably going to be the best one for time. All right, this is my default talent build. You are going to be playing Colossus. Mountain Thane, as far as I know, is like way worse, especially for damage. There are quite a few flex points in this tree, so the first one is going to be right here, these 3 points. I wouldn't play the one on the right, but you can play AoE Kick if you want. I think it's like 2.5% less damage, but having AoE Kick is actually super useful, especially if people are going to complain like, oh my god, we have a warrior in our group, we have no Sigil of Silence, no Avenger's Shield. Well, that's what AoE Kick is for, so you can use that. You also have, if you don't play that, then you can choose between Show of Force or Sudden Death, depending if you want more single target or AoE damage. Also, of note, new in this talent build is Instigate. This talent was really bad, and now it is extremely good, and make sure you play it. Some other choices we have are Battlescarred Veteran versus Battering Ram. I would say if the key is really easy, then you can just play Battering Ram, but for a lot of keys that are difficult for Prot Warrior, Battlescarred Veteran is going to be your best tool. I would generally play Battering Ram like in Theater of Pain only, and Battlescarred Veteran everywhere else if it's actually a hard key. If it's an easy key, then just play full damage, whatever. There's also a point here in Enduring Alacrity that you can swap out for either Ravager or Blood Surge. I would say Ravager is a little bit better for damage. Blood Surge is better for like rage generation throughout the key. However, Enduring Alacrity, I would say, is good, just default option. It does give you a lot of stats. So yeah, those are mostly your choices. I think Indomitable is also droppable if the key is really low and easy, but generally I would try and play Indomitable. On the left side, you have some choices, but make sure, like with Colossus especially, your talent points are a little bit more restricted because you have to take every single point that buffs your revenge on the left side, mostly like Frothing Berserker, this point, this point. You have a couple flex points, but not that many. Right now, I think in this build shown, the flex point is an Intervene, but you can drop that for either like bigger clap for easier gathers, or like move speed on leap, or move speed general, fear, whatever you want. You can also drop the point in Cruel Strikes for another utility point. It's only 1% crit. If you really want to, you can drop Cruel Strikes plus Immovable Object for Champion Spear and Champion's Might for like massive cooldown damage in your cooldowns. However, personally, I do not recommend doing that. For stats, your best stats are crit haste for damage, and also if you can block what you're fighting against, then crit haste is going to be the best. However, Prot Warrior is not really struggling against things you can block. So the biggest struggle for Prot Warrior is things you cannot block, such as things that bleed you, things that do AoE damage to the group, or magical unblockable damage. For those things, versatility is actually going to be a really good stat. So in my opinion, it's good to play with, I would say like 10 to 20%, 20% would be really high. I'd say 10 to 15% verse, and the rest in crit haste. You can also just make another gear set that has like full crit and haste and just play that in easy keys, or just feel it out, whichever you prefer. For trinkets, C4M Pacemaker is going to be your best trinket, and Tome of Light's Devotion is the best single target trinket for all tanks. Also gives you crit, which is nice for Warrior. If you want to play an Absorb trinket, which is going to be pretty important, I think, in big keys for Warrior, Chrome Bustable Bomb Suit is probably the best one. If you can't get that, then Ringing Ritual Mud is also fine. For embellishments, you're going to want to craft Sword and Shield early, usually, unless you randomly get, a mythic one in your vault or raid. You would play Ascension and Writhing Armor Band on those 2 items, because getting like a mythic item early in the season is very strong. Late in the season, you probably are not going to play those. You'll probably just wear like Dawn or Dust Thread, probably Dawn Thread on random item later in the season, but early on you play Ascension usually. Usually that's how it works. All right, for your cooldowns, Avatar is your biggest cooldown. Also note that you are playing a movable object if you're playing the default build, so when you Avatar, it gives you shield wall. Really nice on pull. Definitely just want to be slamming as many avatars as possible. Demo Shout is not as strong as it would probably be with Mountain Thane builds. It does not have a low cooldown from your Lord. Somewhat important, you want to put this up before you do your big damage globals. So just use it like near the start of a pull. If the pull is actually hard, also try not to overlap Demo Shout with the real use of Shield Wall. Like you can use it with your first avatar shield wall, but don't use it with extra shield walls, because then you'll run out of cooldowns a lot faster. All right, actual shield wall. This has a very low cooldown thanks to anger management, plus the default talent we chose was the 2 shield walls, which reduces the cooldown as well. You want to use this before damage happens. It is very important to use this early on and not later. Like if you say, oh no, I'm at 20%, now I use shield wall. That could be really bad because you've already taken most of the damage. Also, there's a pretty high chance you're overlapping it with Battlescarred Veteran at that point. So just be aware of like what actually hurts and use shield wall accordingly before the damage hits you. Key is really easy. It's tough to find a balance with this, but obviously using shield wall does proc avatar. So the best use for this is using it either with your tier set or using it when Demolish is up, but Avatar is not up. To have an Avatar up for your Demolish is a really big hit. Last Stand, since we're not playing Bolster anymore, by the way, I forgot to mention this in the talents. It's because of the tier set. Once you have 4-piece, you don't really need to play any shield block talents other than improve shield block. So since we're not playing Bolster, Last Stand is just a 3-minute CD heal / max HP boost. The max HP boost part is not really that useful because Warrior usually is not getting one shot. It's really just a heal to make sure you don't die. Spell Reflect is important to use well. Make sure you're aware of what you can and cannot reflect. If you cannot reflect, you can always use Spell Reflect as a short DR. Reflecting properly though is really important for your damage, and also really important because generally stuff that can hit you but you can reflect is going to hit pretty hard. This is a link to the spreadsheet, which is upkept by Sense. Usually says exactly what you can reflect and block in every dungeon. We also have a cooldown called Spell Block. So this makes it so a lot of things that you could not normally block, which are spells, you can now block. Again, there's the spreadsheet that tells you exactly what you can and cannot block. Generally, this is like going to be extremely powerful. Also note that if your shield block is down somehow, you will not be spell blocking at 100% accuracy. You need to have shield block up to spell block. As for your damage cooldowns, you usually just send them off cooldown. They are going to give you a lot of rage, so make sure you don't overcap. It's going to make it so you need to basically spam Ignore Pain on top of your revenges in order to not overcap. Battlescarred Veteran, as we mentioned earlier, this is your cheat death. You drop low, it basically makes you immune to death. It gives you a second 80% DR and 100% increased healing taken. You don't want to overlap this with shield wall, but you also want to sometimes. So how do I say this? You don't want to overlap it with shield wall, first of all, but it is sometimes really important to like wall when you wouldn't normally wall, not proc Battlescarred Veteran before an important pull, like such an important cooldown. It doesn't have multiple charges. Think about like how you're protecting it going into a lot of pulls. Hellstone Health Pot. Warrior cannot heal itself very often, so we try to use this when your healer is like AFK or dead, something, and you need to survive. Generally, you don't need to use this like immediately because Warrior is pretty tanky. You can survive a lot of situations and just get healed up by your healer, but you know, if your healer can't heal you, then that's when you use it. One thing to keep in mind with Impending Victory is that you can reuse it when ads die or mobs die. It gives you like a refresh on it, so you can like use it to heal and then kill something and then use it to heal again to make a big play, something like that. So for your defensives, obviously make sure shield block is up all the time. You should have enough uptime based from your tier set and you know, just high enough haste from being in season 2. Shield block is always up. Generally, also with Colossus, you're going to be using Ignore Pain a little bit differently than in the Mountain Thane build. You want to make sure Ignore Pain is up at all times, but don't over spam it. Basically, if you're going to overcap rage, then use it, but if you're like sitting at mid rage, don't spam Ignore Pain, because you can kind of just build under Ignore Pain with Brutal Vitality. In Colossus, over spam it, then obviously you're not getting value out of that talent. You can just over spam it. It's not that big a gain to play around Brutal Vitality, but proper play does play around it. Also, obviously, Prot Warrior, a big portion of Prot Warrior's mitigation is from shield block. Make sure you're facing the mobs or you cannot block. As for how to actually manage your cooldowns in a big pull, I would say you want to Avatar on pull. If you don't have Avatar, you have to use Shield Wall, but ideally Avatar on pull, which just gives you Shield Wall from immovable object. Once that wall falls off, you can Demo Shout, or you can just Demo Shout early once it's grouped. Once the Demo Shout falls off, you need to reassess, like feel out how much damage you were actually taking in the Demo Shout. If you were getting trucked, then just wall immediately. Shout is falling off. If you weren't, then you can kind of try to save wall. You kind of have to feel it out a bit, or just have experience and know exactly what hurts. If Battlescarred Veteran does randomly proc, then try not to overlap anything with it. You are pretty much immune to death when Battlescarred Veteran is active. If you are able to save shield walls, by the way, then you can just send shield walls randomly for Demolish, which I find myself doing quite a bit. in the new season, since you have shown so many shield walls. For tank buster rotations, a lot of the time these is going to be when spell block is useful. It's good to send like 1 or 2 charges of your shield wall before you sign spell block, because when you spell block, you get charges of your shield wall back pretty quickly. Your offensive rotation, basically just send every cooldown off cooldown. Try to use Demo Shout before you do your big globals like Demolish. As far as the rotation goes, it is going to be quite a bit different than Mountain Thane, so Shield Slam is still the #1 priority, but as Colossus, it is really the #1 priority. Make sure you are pushing Shield Slam every time you're able to. The next priority would be applying Rend with Thunderclap, and after that, you want to be spamming as many Revenges as possible, while maintaining as much Ignore Pain, as you need to survive the packs. Can't do anything, then Thunderclap is really good. An Execute available. I'm not quite sure what the target count breakpoints are, but definitely on single target, you want to prioritize pushing Execute as many times as possible. This is by far the highest damage global you have. That doesn't mean just push Execute when Shield Slam is up, by the way, because when you Shield Slam, it gives you Rage, which gives you more Executes later. Also, if you have, one thing you can do is like pull yourself to almost full Rage and then pop Shield Wall for a movable object avatar, and then just push Execute 3 times in a row. That's like a massive damage. For your utility, you don't have that good group utility, but you do have, Shockwave, Stormbolt, Intimidating Shout, if you talent that, and AoE Kick if you talent that. So make sure you're not letting stuff go off as a warrior as much as you can, preventing it as much as you can. Intervene is somewhat useful, and Rallying Cry, is 3-minute cooldown, so it's not that good, but make sure you use it at least once a fight on tough bosses. As for random macros, you can intervene target of target, which is kind of nice on certain mobs. Like if an archer is casting pot shot on your friend, sometimes it's tough to like click on their frame or mouse over it and intervene. You can just like intervene target of target. You counter that. At cursor macros are kind of nice for warrior. These are some examples. Also, you can immune knockbacks and stuns with Demolish. Like let's say a mob is doing some really annoying ability. It's like, oh my god, I have to run out for 3 seconds. Well, instead you can just cast Demolish and stay in. Sometimes depending on the ability. All right, so that is going to be my Prot Warrior guide. Obviously stuff may change, so stay tuned in to the stream, and I'll try to update the guide as much as possible when stuff does change. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to play that much Prot Warrior. The lack of self-sustain is kind of a game changer for me, but again, with proper play, you can survive at most of the keys. Like Shield Wall, Ignore Pain should be enough for your healer to basically catch up and heal you through it.